joins me now for more on the markets. Thank you so much for joining us, Makwe. So Asian markets closed down, but we're up. We're not exactly shooting the lights out. What do you see as the key market drivers today?
I think good afternoon to you. Markets are more still waiting for what's going to happen tomorrow, the statement from the Jackson Hole. And I think that's where the market will get a catalyst, whether it's going to go up or down, or they'll remain sideways as they are now. But yes, we've just seen developments, and since the beginning of the week, we got excited when we heard about that overnight call between the US and China. At least they confirmed that their phase one trade deal is still intact, and they'll do whatever they can to make sure that the deal still remains. So as much as we know there is this tension between them, what is the issue of Hong Kong, what is the issue of accusing each other about the coronavirus, but I think the markets are still at elevated level based on the fact that at least the phase one trade deal is still intact.
Right, so the rand, it seems to be on a strengthening trend. It has been like this for the last number of sessions. What do you attribute to that?
Mainly at the back of a weaker dollar, because we've seen that the market as the risk trade is back on, because people are happy about the progress when it comes to the vaccine, and also the fact that, as we mentioned earlier, about the trade deal. But we don't have to forget that even our own Reserve Bank governor, he did hint one or the other that, when it comes to reducing interest rates, we might be seeing the end of it. So that as well is giving a little of a boost when it comes to our rand. And I think going forward, and that's why will continue to drive the rand, let alone the dollar, that we're no longer going to be reducing interest rates the way we've been expecting, or rapidly as it happened before. And also the inflation numbers that came through. I mean, markets were expecting a number worse than what we got now. That also gave a bit of a boost. But the main thing is the fact that South Africa is nearing the bottom when it comes to reducing their interest rates. And also the dollar continues to weaken at the back of people are no longer fearful to take on risk.
As I mentioned, we've had a slew of results. It's results season in South Africa. Of course, one of the big banks, Nedbank, they came out with their results, reporting basically a headline earnings depreciation of about 69%. Your thoughts on that particular bank and what we can expect from the banking sector in general?
Generally, the banking sector is not doing okay, but I think that has already been baked into asset prices, as apparently 1 out of every 5, people who are employed have lost their jobs. Hence, we see the credit impairments continuing to be high. And Nedbank indicated today that they made a provision. It's up almost 202%. But I think with Nedbank compared to its peers, the future provision was not that robust, and hence the market is not kind of buying into their story. And Nedbank made it clear that they think the worst is over, and as much as for the 6 months the profit might have been down by 70%, but for the full year they expect that to be down by 20%. That confirms to you that the guys are more optimistic compared to other banking sectors. And I think what will happen here is going to be the issue of, are we going to be getting the second wave, or are we going to be getting reinfections, or will we be able to get the vaccine? And we just heard also from the US Kansas City Federal Reserve saying, there's a possibility of a double-dip recession if it happens that this whole thing has to be prolonged when it comes to coronavirus. And I think we're all at the mercy of whether this coronavirus issue will prolong, or if it doesn't, whether we'll be able to get a vaccine sooner than later.
And then a tertiary education sector player, Stdio, they came out with their half-year results, that is for the 6 months ended June 2020. They reported a headline loss of 12 million rand. Your interpretation of their results?
I think going forward, the guys are not looking too bad. Yes, you are right. The guys from headline earnings, they came with a headline loss. But the guys, as a company, they prefer to use what they call the core headline earnings. And you see that it's been up by almost 21%. And also what was impressive was that the revenue increased by 15%. And more importantly, when it comes to the student enrollment, increased by 10%. And I think you have to read that with what we saw earlier in the week, the numbers coming out of Curo, as much as they were struggling with collecting fees, but they also continued to increase the numbers when it comes to learners. So I think going forward, the guys are well positioned, because they're also being able to be in a position to offer some debt relief when it comes to their students. So I think it's not too bad for them. And yes, for sure, year to date, the stock is down almost 32%, but they didn't do too badly, especially if you buy their story that they prefer to use the core headline earnings per se, which was up almost 21%.
Yeah, I didn't take a look at their results, but how did DRD Gold look? What were they saying?
The guys supposed to be getting gold from the gold cents, but apparently the guys are printing money. I mean, their headline earnings are up almost 755%, and all because we've seen the Rand gold price going up, and that managed to offset the decline when it comes to the sale of gold. And the sale of gold was also impacted by the lockdown, COVID-19 lockdowns, and also some disruptions when it comes to electricity supply, whether it's Eskom or Ekululeni. And also they had an almost 8% increase when it comes to their cash operational cost. But that, as a result, didn't have a major impact when it comes to the headline earnings. What's very interesting, we know that in January, the guys issued shares to Sibanye Gold for almost R1 billion. And I think that was an increase of almost 24% ordinary shares that were issued, but the guys continued to make impressive headline earnings per share, even though the number of ordinary shares have increased.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Makwe, for your time and insight as always. Makwe Masilela, he's Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Well, there'll be more business news for you with my colleague Nzinga Kunta after a short break. Do stay with us.